We're going to start modeling, looking at the model itself. All the measurements are there. First, we're going to start with the top plate and bottom plate. Top plate and bottom plate are 16 feet long. And 16 scale is going to be 1 foot. So let's mark 1 foot. After marked 1 foot, you can go ahead and use the combination square. Put your stick against the fence and draw yourself a straight line that is 90 degrees on that piece of wood. Mark an X on the side you don't want, and then use your shear. Place the blade on the side of the X and clip it off. What I'm going to do is I will go over one demonstration of how to replicate this once, and the same process will apply to the rest of the model. What I like to do is put the stick on top, draw a little line where the measurement is at, take the combination square, same way, and get it as straight as you can, draw a little line that is 90 degrees, mark a little X on the side that is waist, which is the waist side, clip that off. This method will be applied to every single one of the model making. So next we're going to go ahead and dive into our stud. Our stud are 6 inches. Let's mark our 6-inch mark, put an X on the side we don't want, which is the waist side, get the combination square and draw a straight line. This process will be applied to every other components that you will be doing as well. So go ahead and clip. Now you have your studs ready. Here are your studs. The next one we go through is do the king stud. The king stud is exactly the same as our stud. And go ahead and measure our 6-inch. Go through the same process. Put an X on the waist side. Do your combination square and draw your straight line. Once you're done with that, clip it and do the same process. We have 2 king studs, so clip 2. Now what we're going to focus on is going to be our jack stud, where our door is going to be. Our jack stud height is going to be 5 1/4. 5 1/4, right there. 5 1/4. Same process. Put an X on this waist side. Draw your lines using the combination square and repeat. We should have 2 of these as well. Next we're going to focus on is looking at the front side. That's all the pieces we've done. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stud. Just going to transfer that onto our bottom plate first. So we got 5 stud and then a king stud. First we're going to draw in our first stud, which is at the end. There it is. It's going to be 1/8. Moving it and draw 1 stud at every inch, because every inch is going to be 16 on center. Just basically 1 inch per stud separation. What we want to do is draw our studs in, and then what we're going to focus on next is drawing 1/16 of an inch on the right side and on the left side of each one of these studs. This will give us the placement of where our studs will be, helping us ensuring that we know where exactly to glue later on. So there we are, drawing our studs placement. Now we have the right side and left side of the center of our measurement of every inch on center. Now I'm going to go ahead and place my stud on the combination square and draw my straight lines. I'm only going to focus on the one on the left and right and not the one in the center, because it's where the center of the stud is going to be. So here we go. Draw the straight lines. After we get all of our studs in on the left hand side, we're also going to include the king stud, which is the left king stud. So we should have a total of 6 studs, well, 5 studs and 1 king stud on the left hand side of the wall. After we have drawn our straight lines in, we're going to take a look back at the model. We know that there is going to be a distance of 3 feet opening, right? The opening between the jack stud is 3 feet. Therefore, we're going to go ahead and first draw in our first jack stud, which is going to be 1/8 of an inch. So go ahead and mark our 1/8 of an inch. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and measure. After we get the 1/8, we're going to measure 3 feet. 16 scale is going to be 2 1/4. So 2 1/4 inch. So let's go ahead and find 2 1/4. Just 2. there is going to be 1/4 right here. So there you go, 1/4 inch. Draw that little line in. That's going to be our opening. So let's go ahead and draw in our jack stud as well. So draw 2 lines. That is going to be 1/8 inch. Here's our jack stud. Now that we got our jack stud in, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our right hand side. We have 1 king stud and 5 regular studs. So we're going to draw that and translate it onto our bottom plate. There's our opening. Let's draw in our king stud first, and then from there I'm going to move it over a little bit to get on center and draw 1 inch separation. So 1 inch is going to be 16 inch on center in real life. So mark my 1 inch. And at the end I'm going to mark a 1/8 of an inch, which is going to be the last stud at the end, meaning it's 2 little lines. Then I'm going to go back and draw 1/16 on the right hand side, 1/16 on the left hand side for each one of these studs, just so we know exactly where to place it when we put our glue later. Now we'll go ahead and take those lines and draw it vertically, so that way we can get our straight line through. Again, we're only going to draw the lines that are on the left and right hand side of our center mark. That's going to be our placement of our studs. The center line is going to be the center of our measurement, which is the 16 inch on center. So just draw on the left hand side and right hand side. And then do one last one at the end. Now we have our bottom plate done. Let's grab our top plate, lay it perfectly on top, and we want to transfer those lines over, just like last week. Take the combination square, line it perfectly. Now we have the top plate and bottom plate. We want to actually get our header in. To measure the header, what we're going to do is measure on the left hand side of our jack stud, and then to the right hand side for jack stud, which is going to be 2.5 inch. There's our 2.5, 1, 2.5. Now we're going to take another piece of stick, lay it perfectly straight, measure our 2.5, mark our little 2.5 mark, and put an X on the waist side, lay it against the fence, draw our line, and cut it. We're going to do this 2 times because our header has 2 sticks. Now that we have everything in, first thing I want to mention is to make sure your line's aligned. If you are twisted like this, the line does not align. Flip it back. Notice how all the line is perfectly aligned. That's what we want. Go ahead and move my top plate away and start with my bottom plate. I'm going to start with the left hand side, my first stud, put a bead of glue in between the 2 lines that I've created. Now that I have a little bead of glue, take my first stud and hold it for about 10 seconds. Blow it if you like, it will expedite the process. You will continue doing this to the next stud all the way down until you hit the king stud. Next, we'll go ahead and take our jack stud, lay it against it to make sure it's correct. It is correct. Let's take another bead of glue, put it at the bottom, and then also sandwiching it. So we're going to go ahead and put another bead on the side of our king stud so that we can actually just sandwich our jack stud to our king stud. Hold it in place for 10 seconds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the king stud on the right hand side before I do the jack stud on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a bead on the right hand side. The right hand king stud will be placed in. Hold it about 10 seconds. Now that it's dried, what we want to do is go ahead and take another bead of glue and do the same as the left hand side. Put a bead on the bottom and take another bead of glue and put it on the top, on the side of our king stud, so we can sandwich our jack stud on the left hand side, on the right hand side. Now continue through, put all your studs, beads of glue, and finish the right hand side. Now let's try to dry fit our header. Before we do so, we're going to go ahead and sandwich our header together. Take 2 P's, put a bead of glue between them, and sandwich them. It's really important when we put our dry fitting of our header, we want to make sure the face of the header is facing you. So I'm gonna go ahead and sandwich it, dry it, here it is. We can go ahead and make sure it's face you and not that way. There we go. Let's go ahead and face you. Now we're gonna go ahead and find the cripple stud and the top jack stud as well. So first, we're gonna put the header on top. We know where it's gonna be between. The header is going to be 2.5, so we're gonna find the center of that. So the center of 2.5, which is half, is 1 1/4. So we're gonna find 1 1/4, draw a little line, get 1/16 on the right, 1/16 on the left. That's our center stud. Then move that over and draw a little line where 1 inch is at on the left hand side, 1 inch on the right hand side. Let's move that over. Here we go. 1 inch on the right hand side. So we know exactly where our cripple stud is going to be sitting. Now we're going to hit and put it against the combination square and draw that across, making sure that we have all of our placement. Here's our first cripple, our second cripple, and our third cripple. And what we want to do too after we finish doing this is to transfer all these lines over to the top of our header, because that will give us the placement of where our jack stud is going to be, and also where our cripple stud is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and draw little lines, transferring it over to the header. Once we have all the lines necessary, transfer it over using combination square so you can actually see it. Here's my first cripple, second cripple, and the last cripple. And I'm going to draw in the left side jack stud as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the header on, make sure it's laying straight, and all the measurement is, all the lines are facing upward. Put a little bead of glue. I'm going to start with the left hand side first, let it sit in there, hold it for a few seconds for it to dry. It's really important to make sure that the lines are facing upward. Get the second bead of glue, sandwiching the header in. Now we can go ahead and measure our jack stud. So we can go ahead and take our combination square, lay it perfectly straight. As you can see, it is going to be 1/2 inch. That's going to be our jack stud and also our cripple stud, and we need 5 of those. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw my first one, make my first one, put an X on the side that I don't want, draw a perfectly straight line upward, and use a shear and cut it off. We'll do this 5 times. Now that we have 2 jack stud and 3 cripple stud, we're going to use those lines we've drawn, and that's where our placement will be. So we'll go ahead and put a little bead first on the first left hand side jack stud. Put the bead of glue on to the bottom and also on the side, and let's go ahead and sandwich this together. As you can see, we know exactly where our jack stud will be and also our cripple. Now that we got everything, we just need to install our top plate. First and most important is to make sure our top plate is facing the correct way. Put a little bead of glue on the first left corner, and we'll go ahead and stick our first stud onto the top left hand corner, and we're gonna let it dry for a little bit, and we're gonna flip upside down and continue through, one stud at a time. Make sure your stud go perfectly in the area where you have drawn your 2 lines, and continue through until you finish. Once you're done, it should look like this. Email me if you have any question.